Trauma, the definition of trauma, a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, a personal trauma, like the death of a child, like going through a divorce, bankruptcy, financial change, having an abortion, a miscarriage, all fall under the definition of trauma, a trauma experience. Erica and I have noticed something recently, that the word of the day is trauma. We're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it on social media. We're seeing it on TikTok. Hear me out, my friends. You can take the word trauma and put it on top of whatever you want to call it. You can add flowers to it. You can make it fluffy. You can make it scary. It is still grief, and that doesn't change. That doesn't change for us, and it shouldn't change for us in society.
And I think more specifically, what we are and have been seeing is trauma response.
Yeah.
Because the trauma is the event or the circumstances, we would say, but it's the response to the trauma. So the topic and the point of this is that we wanted to challenge a little bit, because we already are doing ourselves a disservice as a society by not talking about grief on a regular basis, knowing it's going to happen every day in everyone's life at some point. But we are, as a society, coming up with these pretty names, trauma response, which is essentially PTSD, which is essentially at the core of these concepts, grief. And it doesn't matter how often we go about coming up with the pretty names, we still need to learn how to talk and normalize talking about grief. And I see a lot of professionals taking on these. I specialize in the trauma response. That's the other thing we're seeing. The difference between us and them, and we are all collectively one group, but the difference that sets us apart is they are people essentially studying the concept, right? We are people who have walked this path.
We are women who have walked this path.
We are women who have walked this path. We are grievers.
Yeah.
We have felt these feelings. We have experienced this. So we come from a place of firsthand knowledge, not something we studied in a book. And not that that makes them wrong. It doesn't. Because they're the experts on the concept, right? But we're the experts on how you make it through and come out on the other side. Forever changed, as you say.
Yeah, that made me really proud to hear you say it that way. Check this out, Erica. I share this with clients a lot, especially when you and I get into sharing our personal experiences. This is where therapy and grief healing split. We split right there at that point, because we say, I walked up the stairs to tell my sister that her 10-year-old son had drowned. And the thought that I had in my head was, I don't know how to do this grief thing. Like, I'm literally sharing my grieving experience. You share when that door opened and what you thought I was going to say. Mm-hmm. You share intimate details of your grieving experience. We are grieving women. We are women who have grieved. I love that. I love when you say that, because that is so true. And it is truly where we split. We don't want to challenge anybody in the medical field. We love the medical field. We love therapy. We love all that. But you know what? This started years ago. Us trying to put these flowery colors on what this really is. My friends, this is grief. You will all have multiple grieving experiences throughout your life. Most people come to us and meet us when they have that first grieving experience. But as we sit down and talk to them, we find 20, 30, 40 more other grieving experiences that they have had over their lifetime. It started way back with the 5 stages. These are the 5 stages that the grieving person will go through. You and I've already debunked that is not true.
Right.
I also shared with you that you and I, about 2 or 3 years ago, everybody was coming in telling us they had PTSD. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not diagnosing anything, but I can't even tell you how many times people came in and were told by their therapist or their doctor that they were suffering from PTSD. And we would just look at them and say, yeah, sister, you're grieving. This is a grieving experience. This is an effect of your heart feeling this pain. Your heart is going through this pain. I can label it whatever you want. I can even take grief out of it. Let's take grief out of it. Is that what you want? Okay, let's not call it grief. You're still broken.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart still feels it. Your heart still feels it. You still wake up and cry every day. You long for them. You want them back. So PTSD, 5 stages of grief. Now we have the 4 trauma responses that I'll start with an F. Trauma, just calling it trauma, right? Yeah. Or a trauma response. You and I even do this because we say the first things that you experience are resisting, overreacting, or reacting and avoiding. We give you those labels to it. But what we don't want you to do, my friends, is to get stuck in the label. Mm-hmm. Because if you get stuck in the label of I'm having a trauma response, or this is trauma, or PTSD, any of those things, that becomes intellectual. That's where your brain wants to take it. Your brain wants to label this so that you can wear this like a badge of honor. And you know what else you're doing once you wear it as a badge of honor, Erica? You're not going after the healing.
And that's the thing. It's like when you go to seek some sort of professional help, whatever it is, full range, medical doctor to therapist, it's like they go through the book and they say, okay, what are your symptoms? And they look through and they go, oh, you have trauma. You're experiencing a trauma response. And that's it. They just identify it, you know? And so you're like, oh, okay, I have a trauma response. And then you just walk around doing that. Like, oh, I'm doing this because I have a trauma response. And oh, it's my trauma response. I can't go there because it's my trauma response. You got to go after the pain. Yeah. You've got to take it a step further. And some people will do it in therapy. They will. And like we say, we love therapy. We're not bashing anything like that. But what you said, what sets us apart is we show you ours as well.
Yeah.
We go over ours with you. We jump in that trench with you.
Yeah.
And we help you claw yourself out of there and get back to where you can function without the pain and the heaviness, the darkness that comes after you experience the trauma.
Yeah.
By sharing our own personal experiences of what we went through. It's like you say all the time, we're the guides. We physically get on the journey with you and we show you the way out. And yeah. I think when you go to some sort of therapy or other professionals in the community, they may have experienced their own personal situation, but they don't share it with you.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect because they maintain professionalism. They're taught, and that's the way it's trained, and through no fault. That's the way that they studied and the way that they deliver it. But it's, to me, in my personal opinion, so much more beneficial for the clients that we work with for us to show ours as well, so that they see as an example and also get hopeful.
Yeah.
She did it. I could do it too.
Yeah. There's so many times that we're sitting with our clients and we let them know, like, I have no idea what your experience is like, but I want you to know that on Sunday, and this is a true story, I was in the movie theater and I was watching this beautiful movie about a mother and a daughter, and it brought up a ton of emotions about Sharon. And I just started crying. I was really missing her. I was longing for her. Like, I'm sharing that personal experience with another griever who is missing her dad because she saw a video of him, you know, and all of a sudden she's missing him even more. And so that to me brings so much more weight. That's the person that I want to be with. Tell me what's on that road ahead of me. Tell me what's on that rocky road that I got to look out for. Where are going to be the pitfalls? What do I got to do? Not only that, we jump in the ditch with you. So let's break these down, which I think are amazing. The 4 F's of trauma response are fight. So you actually fight. You and I call that resisting, right? I could resist in a fight. The first thing I want to do is fight back against the grief. I don't want to do this. I resist it. I push back against it. Imagine something coming for you and you push back. I call it resisting. They say flight, like run away.
Avoiding.
It is not uncommon for the griever. So in actuality, these are true because we agree with them. In actuality, the griever will avoid, and they find all different ways to avoid. So they will use alcohol, they will use drugs, they will sleep, they will cry uncontrollably. Anything that they can do to avoid, or find the label, stick the label on like a hat, and then just go on about their merry way. Freeze. Freeze means to do nothing.
Right.
You freeze. You're in the fog. You freeze. Or fawn, which I'm still having a hard time understanding the absolute fawn. So it's not the description of the trauma response. It's the title trauma response that we're pushing back against. If I took the paper that said trauma response and I ran a line through it and wrote grief, or I put equal signs next to it and put grief, the truth is it's all grief. It's a broken heart. Grief is not intellectual. How many times do we have to say that? Grief is an emotional experience that happens in our heart, and we react to that experience.
And grief has existed since the beginning of time. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you go back to, ancient history, people died. It's been since the beginning. There has been death. There has been loss. There has been, deep emotional pain as a result of these experiences. But the fact that we don't normalize talking about it, it's like my brain could explode. I don't understand why we got to keep dressing it up and making it look pretty instead of really talking about the ugly parts of it and how we can get through it.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what fawn was, so I'm going to read it to you. Tell me how this shows up for you in grief. Understanding the fawn trauma response. Fawning is the least known trauma response, and it's primarily related to people pleasing. Individuals who spend a lot of time around toxic people sometimes learn to go above and beyond to make the toxic person happy, thus neutralizing the threat.
That shows up for me as Academy Award-winning behavior.
Yep.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. That's the griever who's at the party, who doesn't want to be there, but is the life of the party and acting like everything is okay, like they didn't go through a divorce, like they're not in the middle of a divorce. They're at the party, they're on the dance floor, and literally all they want to do is fall down and cry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're in a room full of people, but you feel like you're the only one in there. You're the most isolated person because you have so much pain and you don't feel like anyone on the planet will understand what you're going through.
I love that they came up to the title of trauma response. I love that everybody is jumping on the bandwagon, that we're really talking about it, because it gives us the opportunity to say, hey, guys, this is grief. Yes, this is grief. And your body will respond in a certain different way. Yes. Some of the things that some of the people respond to aren't the same way. You and I responded differently to grief.
Yeah.
We responded 100% differently to grief. We use our father as an example, but even for the boys.
Yeah. And, there's something I read that said, the replaying of the experience over and over in your head, if it's a car accident or if it was there's you actually saw like a shooting in front of you, something very obviously traumatic. I replayed you telling me in my head over and over the words after you told me Austin died, and after you called me on the phone and told me that Donovan died. It was like it was on a constant track in my brain. Oh, every time I got in the car and started driving, it was like I was going through it over and over again. That was part of my grief. That's
Yeah.
part of the pain. That is what our brain does to, one, distract us because it's keeping us in the brain, keeping us here because the pain is so overwhelming. So it's just keeping you steady and not really letting you sink into the pain just yet. That's the initial phase when you're in the fog.
Yeah.
You're still trying to realize what has happened to you. And every morning you wake up, you have to remind yourself that that was real life.
Yes.
It wasn't a dream.
Yes.
So, it's that also happened for us. And we didn't have a fancy name.
Yeah, exactly. So when somebody who habitually reacts to stress, when an unhealthy freeze response, because one of them was called freeze, here's some of the things that they will do. They will isolate. They will zone out. They will have brain fog. They will have difficulty making decisions or taking actions. They will be perceived as lazy, fear of achieving and trying new things, and they will have disassociation. They'll disassociate. I'm sorry.
I had all of that.
It's the exact same definition that we use for grief. I don't understand why, as a society, we don't want to call it grief. Why can't we change the definition of the word grief? And you and I have this one mission, and that is to change the way we talk about grief, the way we talk about grief in the world. And so to everybody who is out there and listening right now, you experienced a trauma. Yes, we agree with that. Your body responding is going to respond to that trauma. Erica and I agree with that 100%. You will show up differently than you did the last time you had a trauma response or the way any family members have showed up to that trauma response. And yes, you will resist, you will react, and you will avoid. Those are the three most common things that people do. Or you will freeze, you will fight, you will flight, any of those things, whatever you want to call it. But the truth is, my friend, your heart is very much broken, and it is not going to heal unless you take the action steps that are needed to go after this pain. You're sitting by the sideline just waiting. If you're listening to Time Heals and you're waiting for that time to heal, I'm here to tell you that it ain't going to happen. Stop waiting for it to change. Stop waiting for your life to change and get up and do something about it.
Yeah, that's really it comes down to that. Do you want to feel this way forever? No, no one does. No one wants to feel it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it can't just resolve itself on its own. There has to be something done about it. And actually finding the right person to really connect with you. And it doesn't have to be us. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying you have to find the right person to connect with you and help you get through it. Not just sit and say, okay, yes, you have this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck to you.
You need to GTS it. You need to grieve that shit. Yes. You need to go after it, because the thing is, and this is what surprises a lot of people, when they get into working with us, they have some other trauma in their life that they have to go after. And that's why we say grieve that shit, because there's a bunch of crap in there that you really need to go after. Right. Erica and I are grievers, and we speak the language of grief. And if you want to sit with us, talk with us, hang out with us, our Facebook group is the #1 place to go. Look in the link below and join the Facebook group. We show up in there every day. We'd be honored to meet with you and just hang out. Have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you.